Jose Figueroa, thank you for joining.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Jonny.
All the way from the Canary Islands, right?
Indeed, the sunny Canaries. For now.
So, Jose, I want to talk to you about the war on consciousness, transhumanism, and a lot of other things. But I think it would be interesting to hear your background because you're an investigative journalist, a spiritual teacher, a Reiki master, and like 10 other things. So would you mind giving a little background on your life?
Okay. I'll do my best, Jonny. Yes, I actually was many years ago when I lived and worked in London back in the 90s. I was an investigative journalist. And then now I find myself back in the world of journalism, and I find in myself again investigating and reporting on a variety of subjects, from consciousness to mystery to esoterics, UFOs, and current affairs. And this is what I'm doing. So one time I'm talking about UFOs and interesting places around the world where interesting things are happening or has happened. And other times I actually doing in-depth investigative journalism about a number of subjects. Now, in between now and back in the 90s, when I was an investigative journalist working for Japanese television, I worked for TBS. I also collaborated for the BBC. I collaborated for Telecinco of Spain. At that, in between, I actually developed a career in energy healing, soul coaching, and the teaching of esoteric traditions, always around consciousness and healing. I don't consider myself a spiritual teacher. I think this is a very big word. I share. I share. And this is what I've been doing for the last 20 years. I'll be carrying out workshops and seminars, then taking people in retreats to interesting places around the world. I've been teaching intuition, compassion, and consciousness, the mysteries of healing, the esoteric traditions, and the secrets of Reiki. And I also been teaching soul lessons, karmic patterns, and Bach flower remedies. And I developed a whole system of soul coaching about identifying people's soul lessons and karmic patterns. And this I done for 20 years around the world. And now I'm very focused on my role as a journalist, as a radio journalist and podcast YouTube host, because I'm very passionate about communicating consciousness, traditions, and the mysteries around world, life, the universe, and everything. There you go.
Wonderful. So that's a good segue into how this war of unconsciousness, how you see this division in the world right now. I think we spoke briefly about, I lived in Spain many years ago and still have friends there and have the strange experience of speaking with friends there. And we have the same complaints about our governments, as, before Trump in the US, and still in Spain with, censorship, immigration, taxes. And there's been, the subject is almost boring now. You have like globalists on one side, and then this movement towards populism, certainly in the US and in Italy, Argentina, El Salvador. So these are the geopolitics of it. There's an obvious divide in the world. But from a consciousness perspective, I know that you talk about this yourself, and I've heard other people describe this divide from the perspective of consciousness or religion, of sort of good and evil. So how do you see this as part of a war on consciousness?
Wow. Okay. Well, this is a very deep subject to start with. So I'm going to try to do my best according to my personal understanding and my obvious limitations. In the esoteric traditions, they have an axiom that says, as is above is below.
And
So
Jose,
when you look around,
Jose, would you mind, what are esoteric traditions, just for the audience? What does that mean?
esoteric. Okay, so we go to the semantics, to the word. We have esoteric with S and exoteric with X. So exoteric is what is known to everybody, is what is known to the public. For example, when we talk about a religion, we talk about the dogma, what is on the holy books, like the Bible, the Quran, the sutras, whatever. This is exoteric. This is vox populi, and is accessible to everybody. And then when we talk about esoteric with S, this comes from the Greek esos, which means inner. So this is connected to the inner teachings that every religion and every tradition has, both on the West and on the East. And one of the reasons today's days, a lot of people are looking into Eastern religions, for example, is because in the Eastern religion, the esoterics are far more available and they are part of the everyday teaching. For example, when you enter Buddhism, for example, it's very easy to access esoteric teaching, like teachings that are not for everybody, but for the few that wants to go deeper into the techniques, deeper into the consciousness, deeper into the personal growth, learned about the secret laws governing consciousness and creation, etc., etc., etc. This on the Eastern traditions is very available because it's part of the everyday of those religions. For example, in the West, we have Judaism. For example, in Judaism, you have something called the Kabbalah. This is esoteric. And this is available to people in Judaism if they so wish. While in the Western religions, like for example, Christianity, the esoteric tradition was always hidden because of the history of Christianity. So that knowledge was always carried out by secret societies, initiatic societies, little groups. For example, the first Christians, there was a lot of esoterics going on. And then when the Christian church became the official church of Rome, then all the esotericism went out of the window and it was considered to be a heresy. So for us in the West, it's more complicated to access the esoteric knowledge of our own traditions. So people tend to go to the East because it's easier. For example, yoga is full of esoterics. It's full of the understanding of the energy bodies, of sacred geometry, and all of these things that, for example, in the West is a lot more difficult to find.
And would you say it's more self-centered? Because the esoterics are available?
What you call, because you see, it's about the microcosmos and the macrocosmos. So esoterics is about understanding the microcosmos, in other words, us, the human being, our psyche, our body, our energy centers, and all are around that, and our connection and how it meets with the macrocosmos, with the universe. And that's exactly where consciousness comes in. Because consciousness is how you perceive yourself, the microcosmos, and the macrocosm, the universe, aka reality, aka the matrix.
I've heard,
and this is consciousness.
Jose, I've heard some people talk about mana in Christianity.
About, sorry, what?
Mana, from the Bible as a reference to plant medicine.
Oh yeah, the manna, what fell from the sky in the 40 years journey of Moses.
Is that, people reference that as like a plant medicine reference. Have you heard that before or no?
I have. I think people these days are very keen in finding all kind of excuses to implement or direct people towards plant medicine. And there's a lot of people that are super into plant medicine, and so they're looking for references everywhere. I personally see mana as something else, personally, but I could well be stimuli gram. I don't have access to to the truth.
Hmm. So what is the, now that we have a definition of esoterics, what do you see like geopolitically? What is the war on consciousness?
Well, consciousness, when we talk about geopolitics, we are talking about humanity as a whole. So, what is going on in politics, what is going on in geopolitics, is a reflection of our inner world. We are one. We are humanity, the human race. And the human race in itself is going through a very big process of transformation. And that is playing out in the world out there. So we have the geopolitical world out there, and then we have our own personal world. And if you look at what people are going through these days personally, the conflicts, the doubts, the polarization, the breaking up of society, of family, traditions, all of this is going on in the microcosmos and in the macrocosmos. And the key word here is conflict. Why is conflict? When we look at, as I mentioned, the esoteric tradition, for example, one of the esoteric traditions from the West is called theosophy. So in theosophy, they talk about the seven rays. And it says that the seven rays rules creation. And there is a ray that rules humanity. And that ray is the fourth ray and is called the ray of harmony, equilibrium through conflict. What do this mean? It means that the human race learned the lessons, the communal lessons. We learn it through conflict, through polarization. And it's through going through this conflict and polarization that we as a humanity and also us as individuals, we learned to eventually get out of polarity, to find what the Buddha called the middle way, find the equilibrium, find consciousness, find the solution to our soul lessons and karmic patterns. And this happens through conflict. Unfortunately, this is how humanity works. And if you look around you and the history of humanity, you see a lot of this going on.
And so this division, this is what we're experiencing now.
We are.
How do we get to harmony?
By doing something that is extremely difficult for your average human being. Compromising and going to the center, to the middle. Understanding the other. As the native Indians will say, walk on your enemy's moccasins for 3 miles. You'll get to understand him, understand her. And maybe you can get on his or her shoes. So if everybody does that, then I think the levels of conflict will lower a lot. But this is not what human beings tend to do. We tend to go to the extremes. It's much easier for us. Our psyche is built up for that. And I'm making sense, Jonny?
Yes. And would you liken, I mean, geopolitically, I think of a lot of this as like a war against leftism and authoritarianism as far as American politics, politics in the West generally. So that seems to be the divide. I don't see, I think about this a lot, but I think people are operating in different realities and working off of different facts. So I don't see how the divide can be bridged if we don't even have, we're not even working, we don't have a difference of opinion on a reality. We have different realities altogether. So does that, I mean, how does the West like move forward? How will America repair itself? I don't see that, at least in this country, from what I see. People are like burning Teslas. They still, at least in California, walk around wearing masks. I would say maybe like 5 or 10% of the people I see in Los Angeles wear masks and are paralyzed in fear of like getting sick still. So it's so incredibly divided. I don't see any sort of point of unification Is there something like, do you see a way forward here?
I do. I do. I do. I do. In fact, all of this conflict, all of these different ways to look at reality and to behave and to look at the world and operate, all of this is part of the development of human consciousness. We are learning, we are experiencing, we are suffering along the way. And sooner or later, we are going to learn. And for example, you mentioned the masks and people being terrified of getting sick. You are, making a reference to what happened in 2020 and after that.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, today, April 2025, a lot of people that I speak to, they have changed their mind dramatically between 2021, 2022, and now. A lot. Like thousands upon thousands of people. They were thinking something in 2020 and 2021 and 2022, and now they have changed their minds totally because they have undergone a process of transformation. And for that to happen, they have to go through all that has gone on. The fear, the blaming, the social panic, the accusations, everything. And now they're somewhere else, and vice versa. And people are learning, people are experiencing, and people are following their fears and following their desires. This is what human beings are doing all the time. In fact, it's a duality: fear, desire. In fact, somebody very wise said to me many, many years ago, said, human beings, they look very complicated, but they're not. They only have two buttons: fear, boop, desire. Fear brings you forward, desire makes you stop. Sorry, that way around. Desire brings you forward, fear makes you stop or even go backward. That's it. Everything else is two buttons: fear,
Great.
desire, fear, desire, fear, desire.
Thank you for
and
simplifying
this is where we are.
it.
I know, it's frightening. But when somebody says to you, oh, human beings are so complicated, yes, we are, but we have two buttons: desire, fear, fear, desire. This is what moves us, what stops us, and this is how we learned. Because we learn from our fears and we learn from our desires. And we're doing this individually and collectively. And they're manipulating us through fear and desire.
Who is manipulating us? Who?
That is an extremely good question.
This is what I would like to get at.
Depend which conspiracy theories you talk to, it will give you, a different group. Personally, I think there are forces, let's call it the involutionary forces, the forces that are trying for humanity not to evolve. And these forces are doing what they do best, which is trying for for humanity to don't evolve, to don't go forward, to don't grow in consciousness. The funny thing about it is that everything that happens and everything that is done to try to stop humanity, at the end of the day, helps humanity to go forward. So I'm actually an optimist.
But do you believe that there is like a conspiracy? I've heard so many, I've dug into so many conspiracy theories over the last couple of years.
There's a lot of conspiracy theories, and there's obviously a lot of conspiracies going on. But this is normal. When you look at the history of the world, it's full of conspiracies. Like, in fact, conspiracy is just the way things move in the real world, like groups of people conspiring to either access power or keep power. And this is normal.
Yes.
This is normal. Like, everybody that has access to power conspired to keep it. And everybody that wants to access power conspired to access it. And this is normal. And governments will always have their own agendas, from the people that are part of that government and the people that have put those governments in place, and the interest that ex-governments serve. And even within one government, different individuals are serving different interests. And this is normal. This is normal. It's called Western democracy. It's called Chinese Communist Party. It's called the Ayatollahs in Tehran. It doesn't matter which label you put it. It's groups of people conspiring to keep power or access power, and those people are serving X, Y, and Z interest. Normal. Nothing new about it. This has been going on since the cave age, basically. A lot simpler those days. Because as we evolve as a society, this gets more and more and more and more complex. Follow the money is the easiest way. Follow the money.
Regarding, I wanted to ask you about something I've been thinking about, which is AI and transhumanism. So much of the politics of the last year have been, populism, bringing back manufacturing, at least in the United States, to the United States, working class people. So you have that on the one hand, and then also the fact that we're in an AI arms race with China, and we're investing in AI, and all of these jobs are going to be replaced by AI. So, and this is coming like in the next few years. It's imminent. It's not something in 10 or 15 years. So, how do you think society, how should we look at this? It seems to be an incredible threat and reorganization of society, and I don't think anyone has sufficiently addressed it. Even Trump, who's, just started this tariff war with the aim of supposedly bringing manufacturing back to America. What manufacturing? What are people going to do? They're not going to be working on cars in Detroit. So I feel like this is the elephant in the room that isn't being sufficiently addressed.
Yeah, that's quite a subject, Jonny, really. And you can look at it from many, many different perspectives. I think artificial intelligence is here to stay, and is here to definitely be developed. That's for sure. Transhumanism is being here for a very long time. I actually had a radio program about this. And to us, transhumanism is it's being sold to us. Oh my God, this is so new. I mean, Jonny, since which year have you been able to have a hip replacement? Many years, right?
Decades.
Decades?
Yeah.
Well, this is called transhumanism. Jonny, since when have you been able to have a heart, how do you call this? Marcapasos. How do you say that in English?
Transplant. Oh, a pacemaker.
Yeah, not even a heart transplant.
A pacemaker.
Marcapasos.
Pacemaker.
Sorry?
Pacemaker.
A pacemaker, yes. Yeah. Since when has that been available? Decades?
Yeah.
Exactly. This is already transhumanism.
But what about
pacemaker, hip replacement? Wait. So we are a transhumanist species already a long time ago. Now, what happened is that now the technology is increasing and the capacities are so huge that now what we have is many different risks connected to this. And one of the risks that people are talking about is one, of course, when you start playing with, brain implants and any kind of implants that allow you not only to perhaps has increased consciousness to a certain level or increase health, but that can also allow a company, a government, to actually have direct access to your body and to somehow, play around with you. And what happened is, depending on the technology that you have inserted in your body, you are going to be, you're going to get closer and closer to a superhuman, so to speak. This is obviously going to be for people that are wealthy, that have a lot of money. And maybe the other implants are going to be slightly different, and maybe they make you more of a cyber slave rather than a superhuman. And that is not going to be for the very rich people, but for the rest of us. And this is just the way humanity goes all the bloody time. So, it's normal.
Is it the end of humanity?
I hope not. But I think what we have here, and this is a tricky subject, because you can look at this from so many different angles that is complicated. So let me explain you something. I've been researching this transhumanism business, and I've been reading a lot about it, and I've been looking at the people out there that are advocating for this. And some of the people that are advocating for this, they are saying that this is not the end of humanity, but this is the end of death. They said that they will come to the point where humans don't need to die. They will have, body parts replaced, this replaced, that replaced, downloaded, uploaded, and maybe even you can eventually download somebody's consciousness into a new body and this kind of thing. So they're talking about the end of death. And again, I don't think this is going to be available for everybody. That's one. That's, by what I know about humanity. And two, and now this is where I come in from the esoteric perspective, like, why should you be afraid to die? Why? What's wrong? It's okay to die. It's all right. Oh my God, I want to die. And this is the problem. This is a very big problem, because they are, in the one hand, these culture wars. For example, you probably have realized this, that there's a very big culture war going on around religious and spiritual beliefs. And they want us, from one side of this polarization, then they want us to be atheists, to don't believe in absolutely anything. Mm-hmm. This is all there is. You are born, you grow up, you procreate if you can, and you eat, sleep, and go to the loo, and don't forget to pay your taxes. And this is it. There's no spiritual dimension to humanity. So if you have this mindset that there's nothing to transcend to, there's no place to go, there's no spiritual life, because you're religious or you can be spiritual, but you have a belief. You have a belief that your body is not the end of the story, that there's an evolution going on, and that you will transcend. So if you are somebody with spiritual beliefs or religious beliefs of any kind, you have absolutely no problem with dying. It's okay. It's part of the evolution. If you have no spiritual beliefs, if you're an atheist and you are bloody terrified to die, because this is all what it is, then they own you. And then you will be fighting to have all the body possible replacements so that you don't die. And you will sell literally your soul so that you don't die. Do you see where I'm going?
Yeah, and seems to be a debate among religious people if this is wrong or evil. A lot of people talk about like Neuralink, Elon Musk's chip, whether this is like the ethical and moral questions around it. And I think religious people are against it. It's like playing God.
But you see, we are made at the image of God. The Bible says. So
do you believe
made
in God? Jose, do you believe in God?
Me, personally, of course I do.
What is God?
Don't ask me. But don't be naughty. That's one. And two, you see, people say, but do you believe in God? And Like it looks like they are thinking of this man with white hair and a beard up in a cloud that goes, "Don't you touch yourself? I'm looking at you." You know, this is but this is the concept of God that a lot of people have in the back of their minds, I think. So, this is a highly and, very low consciousness idea of a divinity. So, I believe that there is not just a God. I think there is a whole, spiritual dimension out there, multi-universe, and definitely a source and a lot of things. I actually practice 5 religions. So
What
you
are the
may be
5?
talking to the wrong guy in some ways, because
What are the
I
5?
find fascinating. Yes, but I have to actually do practice and do study them. This is, this may be shocking to a lot of people.
Which
but
religions, Jose?
Sorry?
Which are the 5?
Oh God, don't get me started on that one.
Can you just name them for us? I'm curious. Can you just name them for us?
I'm a Christian. I'm a Buddhist, and I was brought up in Catholicism. And I don't see a conflict between Catholicism and Buddhism at all. I'm a Buddhist, and as a Buddhist, I belong to Tibetan Buddhism, and within Tibetan Buddhism, I have taken initiation and received teachings on 9 different Tibetan Buddhist sects. I also follow the Tao, and I also follow the ways of the Shinto. And I am actually totally fascinated with both, and now I'm going to get into a lot of trouble. I'm fascinated with the Sufi aspect of Islam, and I study actively Kabbalah. So let's say I believe in a lot of things. And I study them and I believe, but for me, the belief is not so important. It's the joining the dots. This is what I've been trying to do all my life, joining the dots and trying to understand the nature of reality. But now it's fashionably called the Matrix, since the famous movie, the very fabric of reality, the universe, the multi-universe, where we come from, where we are, where we're going. This is what fascinates me. And this is what I dwell into. And as a healer, as somebody that works with energy healing, you have no choice but to actually look into this. And it become an experience, not a belief. An experience. I'm very much into experiencing.
What opened your eyes? What was your first experience with this? What, as far as your own consciousness, like you mentioned, a certain type of belief in God that's low consciousness of just like a gray-haired guy in the sky or something. But what was your first like consciousness experience?
Well, I have a bit of a particular life. When I was 14 years old, I actually encountered a teacher of esoterics, of esoteric tradition, when I was 14 years old. And this person started to introduce me to a different way to look at life. And he taught me to meditate. And he gave me some very interesting books to read. And as my consciousness started to grow, I mean, I was very young, I was 14. But as you start thinking and you start meditating and contemplating, then sooner or later you're going to have some kind of experience. And I have a couple of what you would call, the Japanese call it satori, a satori moment. I had a couple of these where suddenly I understood, I saw with clarity a number of things. And this is not an intellectual thing. It's just suddenly you see it. You see it, you understand it. For you, it's very real. So I had a couple of these at a very, very early age. Then it took me some years to actually understand what had happened. Then now looking back, I go, I see. Okay. Like the kind of things that now people are using, like a lot of people are now doing plant medicine because they are looking for this kind of experiences. And I like you don't really need it. If you learn to meditate and to contemplate and to breathe and a whole number of things, you have enough chemistry in your body to actually have very interesting and very safe experiences, hallucinogenics free.
What do you think of plant medicine? Like, what's the purpose of it? It's been like brought into the West, and it seems to me like it's being kind of recommended openly without much restriction and being served by, there's like a lineage, I guess, to a lot of the plant medicine and, cultures, kind of original cultures that it comes from. And now it's like kind of everywhere in the West, people are microdosing and taking it out of the like its original context. So what do you think of what's the purpose of plant medicine? And then some people also talk about like that plant medicine can open the door for bad things also.
Yeah, I actually agree with a lot of what you say. Now, I don't like to demonize things. Never a good idea to demonize anything or anybody. And I don't want to demonize plant medicine. Now, when I was very, very young, when I was around the age of 16, I sat down with somebody that now I understand was a shaman. At the time, I wasn't really aware who I had in front of me because he didn't introduce himself as a shaman at all. Now I look back and I go, wow. So, and this man explained something to me. And I'm going to try to shorten it up a lot because then what he explained to me, then I have the opportunity much later on to actually talk about to people actually in Mexico and Panama, coming from these traditions and so on and so forth. So he explained to me that originally in certain societies, they will use some kind of plant medicine and they will use it in a very, very restricted manner. And they will be given to very specific people at very specific times and as little as possible in order to help them transcend certain cognitive barriers. And that will help them to connect or receive information from other realms or from parts of themselves in the multi-universe, or to help them to have deep insights. But that this will be given to very, very few people, a very, very few times, and in a very restricted manner, because the whole idea is that people, if they do the work they have to do, work with themselves, they actually do not need this. They can access this information by themselves. And for example, there are traditions out there where this is actually forbidden. I'm talking about esoteric traditions. This is like forbidden. You shouldn't even, go there, okay? Because of the dangers of it. Because this may affect your psyche negatively. And for some people, this can not be a very good idea. And for other people, can be disastrous. And also because of the dangers of opening up doors inside yourself, inside your own psyche, to parts of yourself that are not good ideas, or to other dimensions where you are not protected against certain influences, energetical influences. And the people that originally took this stuff, they were prepared for this. They have trained for this. They have trained their minds, they have trained their understanding, they have trained a lot of things, and they will be doing it with somebody, with them, next to them. But I'm not talking about, 20 people in a circle, every Saturday night for a month. So nothing to do with this, you see. And this is going to sound a little bit shocking, but in those circles, the more plant medicine you use, I don't know which word to use, the more of a failure you are as a shaman, basically.
Oh,
or as a wannabe shaman. So you see, in certain circles, like, the minute they see somebody using this, they go, "Oh fuck, another one." Like, yeah, this is very hard to hear this. But I had an 85-year-old shaman explain this to me. And he said, but you see, white people, they want now, everything now. And there's other people who are more than happy to sell to white people to make a lot of money. And they don't give up, a damn. And, but this is very hard what I'm saying. And I'm sure you're going to have a lot of people, "Oh my God, but plant medicine changed my life." I'm sure it did. And for a lot of people, it has meant a lot of things, and it have helped them to open up and to access other realities. Because before they went into plant medicine, they were in a New York office, typing away in a computer, and they didn't feel anything, they didn't see anything, they were totally spiritually numb. And it's for these people, for the spiritually numb, that the plant medicine was intended. When you were a wannabe shaman in some tribe in the Amazonia, and you were more spiritually numb than normal, then they will give you the plant medicine to, like, But then, if you depend on the plant medicine to be a shaman, you are in trouble. And white people are perfect for plant medicine because they are spiritually numb. And they don't connect with the heart. So you have to give them liters of it. And then they become spiritually addicted. And before you know, suddenly there is, a path made of plant medicine. Plant medicine was never a path. Never. It was something that may be used at some point. I'm going to give you an example. Do you know that the Christians have plant medicine?
Is it mana or something?
No.
What is it?
No, but this is all bullshit. Sorry. Excuse my French.
You can swear.
Would you like me to explain to you what's the Christians' plant medicine?
Yes.
How is used or was used? Easy. If you go to any monastery in Europe, it's very likely that this monastery is in the middle of a vineyard.
In the middle of
monasteries in Europe, vineyard.
Oh, vineyard. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorry, vineyard. Una viña en español. So a lot of these monasteries around the world, they are in the middle of vineyards. A lot of wine, okay? Because you'd use wine for mass. And wine, the vine is connected to Noah and the beginning, of the new humanity. There's a lot of symbolism here. And a lot of these monasteries have a lot of access to wine. Traditionally, in France, in Italy, in Spain, I'm sure many of the monasteries in the New World also have their wineries, okay? Because this was part of, what they produce and make money with. So when you go to the refectorium, to the place in the monastery where the monks eat and drink, you will have a big sign at the door that says in Latin, "In vino veritas," which means in wine you will find truth. Do you know where this is coming from? I tell you. And you're going to see here the picture very, very easily. Imagine these 100 or 150 or 200 monks, all male with, a chastity vow, old ones, young ones, a little bit from everything, all these different personalities and backgrounds. But one thing in common, they're all living together in a monastery, praying, working the land night and day. And all of these people, they are actually having a spiritual life, because monks were not there, needle-doodly. They were actually praying, meditating, singing, waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning to do the morning mass and to chant, and then they will meditate and have mass and then another mass. They were having a spiritual project. They were spiritual within a religious community. And each of these monks, they will have an older brother or even the abbot of the monastery that is following up their spiritual development. They will have confession at least once a week, and during the time of confession, they will tell their things and, blah, 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 blah. And then they will get spiritual exercises. And so this is spiritual people together in a monastery. And then imagine that one of these older brothers or the abbot, they see that Father Jonny is like, I'm not sure if Father Jonny is really doing his spiritual job. Or there's something wrong with Father Jonny, but I don't know what's going on. I don't know how to help him because I can see there's something going on, but Father Jonny is not talking to me or whatever. Or I can see him, he's troubled. So what do they do with Father Jonny? Come, Father Jonny, join us here for a little chat. Have a glass of wine, Father Jonny. And they will get Father Jonny drunk. Because when Father Jonny gets drunk, the truth is going to come up. In vino veritas. So if Father Jonny has a problem with anger and frustration, he's going to be an angry drunk. If Father Jonny has a problem with very unchristian horniness, he's going to come up, he's going to get horny. If Father Jonny is very sad inside and he's not sharing his sadness, he's going to be a very, very sad drunk. And so on and so forth. So they will use the Christians' plant medicine to help the spiritual development. For example, do you see?
Amazing. Yeah. I think
this is the esoterics of wine and Christianity.
I think someone said it's impossible to know. It's almost impossible to know what's in a man's heart with that alcohol.
Get him to drink.
I think that was Welbeck.
There is two things you can give to somebody to know who they really are. Do you know what? Alcohol. And the other one? Money. Or power. Give somebody power or money, and you will know who they are. Because then they can safely be who they are. Give them power, give them a uniform, or give them a charge, or give them money. You will know who they are. Sooner or later. It's like when people say to you, oh, so-and-so was such a nice person, and then he made money, he changed completely. No, he didn't change. He saw you who he was, really. Because when he was poor, he couldn't afford to be who he really was. Or he didn't even know who he was. Now you give them money. You will know who they are. Or give them power. So, in vino veritas, in money veritas. So, to go back to the plant medicine, different types of, because you see, wine is a plant. All of these are plants, all of it.
And it's a ceremony.
So
it's a ceremony.
There is a ceremony. There's a mass, or there is this, or there is that. It depends. You see, every culture different. In the Greco-Roman religions, they also have plant medicines and things like this, but because they were looking for certain moments of ecstasies, of communion with the divinity. they will have special initiations, where they will go through, like fasting, meditating, the whole number of things, and then they will give them some substance that will help them to have, an enhanced moment of consciousness. But this was just part of this, that was like 1% of the whole experience. And also it has its part. The practice, the religion, whatever it was not based on it, which is what you are finding. So, I'm not per se against plant medicine, but I'm definitely against the way it's being used in the West. Because also, as a therapist, I have met personally, in the last 20 years, I have met personally many, many, many people that has developed a lot of problems. And they're not even aware of it.
From plant medicine.
Anybody else sees it, but they don't. And this is I've seen this. And I have actually helped people get off plant medicine. And once you get them off, and if they're able, because you see, some people have taken so much plant medicine, so much, that their energetical body is really screwed up. It's like if they've been taking, hard drugs. They are having a lot of problems.
Yeah, I see.
It's complicated,
Jose, I see so much of this in Los Angeles. There's
a
huge plant medicine community, and people who every weekend are doing ayahuasca ceremonies.
I know, this is dangerous.
And they refer to it as like doing the work. Like
I'm
doing a lot of work. I've done this, I've done that. And then I'm a totally different person now. And they aren't. Like I have never met that person. I think it's very, I've had experiences myself. It can be very revelatory and illuminating. But as far as like working on yourself, that's the stuff that you have to do on your own. On a consistent basis.
And
that's like the hard, awful stuff that you have to do.
Yeah, and also you see, when you are dealing with plant medicine, ideally you have by your side a shaman and somebody that can go in and out of the worlds with you. And this is not just during the ceremony that you pay the shaman, but you see, this is very complex. We're talking about very deep work, and you need somebody that has knowledge about, the nature of reality, and you have like some kind of plan of work with yourself. This is called a tradition. But you don't find this in Los Angeles or in Milano. Just people that go to these get-togethers and I don't want to be critical.
Of course.
It's very complex.
I think you've explained it well. Another thing I've heard is people say that it's the plant, it's not you. People mistake the experience for an aspect of themselves, but it's the plant.
Look, Johnny, the problem is that people don't understand what a plant is. This is a problem.
What's a plant?
Exactly. You see, it's all about context. And in these traditions where this is original from, these people, they know what a plant is. They understand it. They have really a concept. While we in the West, we don't. In the 21st century, we don't really have an understanding. We don't really have the context. And this is why we so willy-nilly, go and start ingesting all of these things and going to all these ceremonies, because we don't really understand what we are doing and what is a plant. Because for us, the plant is, this thing, physically to us, this like this thing you have behind you in the studio, this is a plant. But, that plant that you have behind you in the studio is the physical body, the physical expression in this dimension, in this plane of a much, much larger entity. That, to put it easily, this entity, this consciousness, this deva, to give it, its oriental name, this deva, this spirit, this plant spirit, is a being, it's an entity from a parallel dimension that has all these bodies manifested in this dimension. But you see all these plants, you see all the trees in the world. Like, for example, all the pine trees in the world. All the pine trees in the world, you see all the different bodies, but there is a pine deva. This is the spirit of all pines, millions upon millions upon millions of pines on earth. Can you imagine the power of that deva of the natural world with millions of bodies expressed on planet Earth? Now translate that to plant medicine. And now imagine a plant that was consumed by 0.00001% of the world population until recently, and now suddenly is being produced like, in an industrial basis, and taken by tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people around the world. This is having an impact on this plant and on this being on the other side. But people don't even begin to understand that. They don't get it because they don't understand the nature of reality. Do you understand me? And this is not just like, you have to understand that a plant is never a plant. A plant has a type. For example, will it be the same?
Jose, we have to
a tomato plant, and I finish now. A tomato plant, yes, and let's say cannabis, for example. Do you think they have the same?
No.
The same level, consciousness, frequency? No. And to understand that, and what is the purpose, and what is like the spirit of the tomato plant, and what is the purpose, if any, and the spirit of the cannabis plant, to actually understand that and understand the hidden properties, that makes you a shaman. And then you know what not to do under any stretch of the imagination. And I'm going to give you one more little clue, Jonny. One more little clue. And I know we have to end. Japan, one of the oldest societies in the world, one of the wisest. Do you know that their sacred plant is what? Do you know what the sacred plant is? Cannabis. But they don't touch it. They don't smoke it. They don't eat it. They do nothing with it because they know something. So they don't even touch it. But they know how to use it. But it's nothing to do with ingesting it, smoking it, eating it, or anything like it. If you do that, the Japanese think you are crazy.
Wow. Well, Jose, we'll have to get into cannabis on the next episode.
But do you see what I mean?
I do. Jose, thank you so much for joining.
I hope this was useful, and thank you.